deep beneath the ocean. For nearly 100 years, a massive submarine from the time of World War II had remained buried under mud and darkness. Once, it was one of the most powerful military weapons of war. But after the war ended, at some point it disappeared beneath the seafloor. Over the decades, rust covered its entire body. Algae and marine layers surrounded it completely. And slowly, it turned into a forgotten military wreck hidden beneath the ocean. Today, after many years, this submarine will finally be recovered from underwater once again. And not only recovered, the entire process of how this long-lost military submarine is restored step by step and brought back into operational condition will also be shown. First, a military search vessel begins scanning the entire area using sonar systems. Slowly, the enormous structure of the submarine appears on the monitor screens, and it becomes clear. This is the same submarine that had been missing for decades. After that, a specially trained diving team descends deep underwater. At such depths, very little light reaches the ocean floor. Without the divers' powerful underwater lights, almost nothing could be seen around them. After a few moments, the front section of the submarine slowly emerges from the darkness. The entire body was covered in mud, algae, and heavy rust. Many metal sections had already corroded away. While some parts were trapped deep inside the seabed, the divers carefully began attaching steel cables around the submarine. After that, massive airlift bags were secured to different sections of the hull. Slowly, high-pressure air was pumped into the bags. Moments later, the mud beneath the ocean floor began to shift, and the submarine, trapped for decades underwater, slowly started rising toward the surface. Above the water, military recovery ships controlled the entire structure using heavy cranes. Finally, for the first time in decades, the upper section of the submarine emerged above the ocean surface. The entire body was covered with thick rust, algae, and marine buildup, clearly showing how long it had remained beneath the sea. After that, the submarine was transported to a highly secured military workshop, and from there, the long restoration process officially began. During the first several weeks, the work focused entirely on cleaning. High-pressure water jets were used to wash the entire submarine. Years of accumulated algae, mud, salt deposits, and marine minerals were slowly removed. Workers used special scrapers and grinding machines to clean the hardened rust. Once the cleaning process was completed, the true condition of the submarine became clearly visible. Many steel plates had severely corroded, several large cracks were discovered, and some sections had become so weak that replacing them entirely was the only option. After that, military engineers began inspecting the entire structure. Special ultrasonic scanners were used to measure the thickness and strength of the metal. Every usable section and every completely damaged area was carefully identified. Then the process of removing the damaged sections began. Rusted steel plates were cut away using cutting torches. Sparks from welding and cutting illuminated the entire workshop. One team worked on the outer hull, while another team dismantled the interior cabins and engine room to remove old components. The engine room was in the worst condition. The diesel engines were completely seized with rust. Pipelines were damaged, and many electrical wires had decayed and fused together. Every component was carefully removed and separated. Some parts were submerged in chemical tanks to remove corrosion, while others were cleaned using sandblasting machines. Under intense pressure, layers of old rust slowly disappeared, revealing the original metal underneath once again. However, many components were no longer usable, because most of them were originally manufactured during World War II, and many of those parts no longer exist today. So engineers began recreating new components using old military blueprints. Large lathe machines inside the workshop were used to manufacture new gears. Some workers produced new valves, while others rebuilt the old control systems. Gradually, the entire structure of the submarine began taking shape once again. Damaged areas were reinforced with new steel plates, and newly fabricated metal sections were welded into the original structure. After that, reconstruction of the interior began. The old cabins were cleaned and fitted with new metal panels. Flooring was replaced, and the control room was rebuilt following its original military design. Some original switches and instruments were preserved as part of the submarine's history. Afterward, a completely new electrical system was installed. New wiring was added throughout the submarine. New lighting systems were installed, and slowly, the cabins that had remained dark for decades lit up once again. Finally came the most important stage, testing whether all systems of the submarine were functioning properly. First, inside the workshop, the engines and various systems were tested. Control systems, power lines, engine pressure, everything was carefully monitored by military engineers. After that, the submarine was slowly lowered back into the water. Because the final tests had to be performed in real operating conditions, once the submarine was floating again, the engines were restarted. Several military engineers remained inside monitoring all systems, while support teams outside observed every movement carefully. At first, the submarine slowly began moving across the water. Then the engine power was gradually increased. Various control systems were tested underwater. Engineers carefully checked for leaks, monitored engine performance, and verified whether the navigation systems were responding correctly. After several moments, it was finally confirmed. The 100-year-old submarine had fully returned to operational condition once again. A deep sense of satisfaction spread throughout the entire team. Because this was not simply the repair of an old submarine, it was the incredible moment of bringing a lost piece of military history back to life. And in the final scene, as the submarine slowly moves across the water once again, it truly feels as if a forgotten part of history hidden deep beneath the ocean has finally returned.